I run Ask, but also a bigger group of companies that we call Informed Media, which has a bunch of other companies under it. Almost all of these companies we've acquired in the last couple of years. So, and I'll tell you a little more. Here's some of the stats of the acquisitions we've done. This is why I know something about M&A. 80 companies, up to $2 billion for each company. It's as small as $2 million, so really startup to giant public companies we've looked at. Companies that have from 10 to 1,600 people in it. These are the ones we've looked at in the last couple of years. We've acquired 7 companies, spent over $600 million. Add up all the users of all the companies, almost 500 million worldwide uniques, which would put us, if you add this all up into one collection, about the number 5 company worldwide on the web, 5 or 6. So it's a big group of companies, and all through acquisition, really, except for Ask. So that's M&A. What do I know about driverless cars? Yeah. Nothing. In fact, when I wrote Blank Space, I started thinking of probably what you're thinking of, and it turns out that Taylor Swift actually knows more about driverless cars than I do, as evidenced by this picture. So why am I talking about driverless cars? Well, one thing I looked at the School of Information mission. This really seemed interesting. To use knowledge and people and technology to build a better world. I mean, that's what I geek out at with driverless cars. That's really what it's all about. And then the other thing, why you guys probably know more about this than I do, you're building M-City here, which is about to open. You guys all are shaking and nodding your head, so I don't have to tell you what that is. But it's pretty fascinating that it's being built here in Michigan and opening up in July. And so what a cool thing. Let's talk about together. So what the people who are designing these driverless cars, how about 5 things that they can teach us if you're starting a company about M&A? My perspective on M&A is really from the acquiring side. So some of these things will be more for what you can do to help sell your company and what acquirers are looking for. Question number 1, will consumers buy driverless cars? I mean, that's at the top of mind for people who are designing them. And let's look at it. One of the things that is the big selling point you hear about driverless cars is safety. And how does safety compare to the financial cost of a car? And will people trade their money for safety? And it makes sense because if you look at the highway accidents, and particular fatalities, and what causes fatalities, it turns out there are 3 causes or 3 combinations of causes that cause fatalities. It's the driver, it's the vehicle, or it's something in the environment, the roadway. But if you look at the numbers about what percentage cause fatalities, it's kind of striking. 93% involve driver error or driver involvement. The things are just the vehicle or just the roadway, they hardly matter at all in fatalities. So if you can get the driver out of the car, then you're better off. So here's my question. Are you a good driver? Raise your hand if you're a good driver. Yeah. Oh, good. I want to see good. So look, that's actually pretty consistent with this. So Allstate did research into this. They found 2 categories, good or excellent drivers and not so hot drivers. This was their finding, 64% in the good driver category and 36% in the not so hot driver category, which actually makes you feel pretty good about being on the roads until you understand the methodology, which was ask people if they're a good driver or not. We got about the same from you. When you asked a more interesting question, which is your friend a good driver, is your family mate a good driver, or your neighbor a good driver, these were the numbers. 22% were good drivers, and 78% were bad drivers. So that actually sort of meshes with the 93% in accident. There are a lot of things that make us bad drivers. This is from the same study. This is the percent of people who admit to doing these things while driving, right? 89% admit to speeding. Now, this is not just what do my friends do. This is what do I do. They text, they drive while they're tired, they drive while they're drunk, and they drive while they're stressed. So if you can get the driver out of the car, we're better off. The problem is that the people who Allstate found were the worst, and maybe your experience is the same, the worst between judging the difference between how good they actually are and how good they perceive are men, college-educated people, and Republicans. That group of people were the worst at judging whether they were good drivers and actually being good drivers. Why is this important? Well, it turns out that autonomous cars are pretty darn expensive. And when you look at who buys expensive cars, you're talking about men and college graduates and Republicans. If you want to get people to buy driverless cars and you're selling safety, you may have a big problem if you're selling it to these people. What are you going to do? This is the problem. You got money bags here, and he's not interested in the safety of driving a driverless car. So you've got to come up with the right incentives, and that's what people are working on with driverless cars. Those incentives being tax breaks, carpool lane, some kind of convenience, and obviously some cachet. And Tesla is a good example of this. I don't think I've ever seen a poor woman Democrat driving a Tesla in my life. What does this have to do with M&A? There's also a same dichotomy in M&A between the founder of a startup, oftentimes, and wanting to do a deal. The incentives aren't always the right ones. Great entrepreneurs need three things: vision, passion, and dedication. Everyone I've talked to who is a great entrepreneur has these things. They may not be sufficient, but they're absolutely necessary. Turns out that these are also the people who are least likely to sell their company because they're the ones who most believe in what they're doing. Let me give you an example of a company that we recently bought and sort of how this mattered. The company is AskFM. We bought them in this past August. And a note about who AskFM is. Do you guys know who you're maybe a little bit older, but I can see a lot of nodding heads. The size of the social network is actually kind of staggering. 183 million, it's actually been higher, and we'll talk about why it's down a little bit. But it's a question and answer service. It was started in Latvia, and it's grown huge, especially with the group of people who are slightly younger than you all. And this is what the growth curve looked like. Started in 2010. They were humming along in 2012 when they launched an iPhone app, and boom, the site takes off and reaches 210 million users. These were the founders, brothers Mark and Ilya Terabin, two Russians who live in Latvia and had this vision for this site. They had a great vision, they had great dedication and great passion, but their vision was interesting. Their vision was a site where teenagers could go and say anything to anybody. A marketplace of free ideas and free speech for teenagers. That's what they believed passionately in. The world didn't have and the world needed. The problem is when you give that to the world and that's all you give and without any other controls, teenagers tend to say sometimes mean things. And the free marketplace of ideas isn't always a nice one. Nevertheless, they were asked about this and they come up with some of these quotes, and I won't read them all to you, but they were quoted as saying these things and other things like them, like, if your teenager is going to say mean things, keep them off our site, that's fine. Probably agree with that. But the other things they were saying, and when some of these comments ended up resulting in suicides, and there were about half dozen to a dozen, they would say things like, keep your sick kid who's going to commit suicide off my site. That really doesn't make your service go over too well. And as people were digging into this, Time magazine put them on the cover, at least in Europe, calling AskFM the anti-social network. What's happening at the meantime with the business? As you expect, right back down, right? A lot of teens using this site, and parents saying, I don't need my teen on this site, if that's what these guys are saying about why it exists. We have founders who are valuing their passion and their control way more than their business prospects. And it's really not that unfamiliar in looking at companies as much as I do to see, this is an extreme example, but seeing founders who care a lot more about their vision and their passion and the control of their company than they do about the business growth. So what do you have to do in those situations if you're an acquirer, and what do you have to do if you're working with someone or if you're thinking about starting a company is, well, for these guys, we had to take away control. That was the easy way to come up with the right incentives. We did that by suing them and winning, and we could have shut them down, and so we ended up buying them. But the lesson for you is make sure you get the incentives right, and make sure you know why you're running the company and what it's going to take to sell. It's not necessarily all about the Benjamins. It's all about the incentives. Okay, that was question number one. Question number two, how will humans behave behind the self-driving wheel? Really interesting question. We talked about safety, but the environment is another reason why people are excited about self-driving cars. There's a few reasons why. There's a lot of debate about some of these. Fewer cars, whether there'll be fewer cars on the street with self-driving cars or not, is one question of big debate. But we'll get into that in a second. Lighter weight cars, shift electric power, all these are reasons why you can get excited about the environmental benefits. But the real big environmental benefit is from reducing traffic. Traffic can be cut by up to 80% if we get rid of drivers in the car. And why is that? Well, because a lot of the time we spend in traffic are dealing with other people, learning to merge. Another one is just stopping at red lights. Red lights actually, you can think about it, your car is running, it's burning gas, it's idling, and you're not doing anything, you're just stopped. And the reason you're doing that is because humans need to know when to go and when not to go. But if you had computers doing this in the car, I'll see how I can get this to start. You would get something like this, right? Where the don't need traffic lights because all the cars are just going, they're communicating with each other, they can zoom around. And if that looks terrifying to you, you're right, it is. In fact, it exists somewhere today. If you go to China, right, this is an intersection in Shanghai. I've actually been in this intersection, and it feels exactly like that. And it is flippin' terrifying. So how do you design a system where you're going to be sitting in this car, and your car's heading for the intersection, and you're supposed to just let it do it? And does it matter which one of these people you are, right, when you come to that intersection? Because this only works if the college student and the grandmother and the NASCAR driver all allow the car to do its job. If they all step on the gas or steer the steering wheel, this whole system breaks down. And that makes me think of this issue, which is called the trolley problem in ethics, but I like to call something different, the utilitarian death paradox. And it works something like this. So say you're driving down the road, and a big rock falls in front of you, and you're forced to make an instant decision about whether you're going to turn left or you're going to turn right. And those are your only two choices, left or right. And either way, you can't stop. And if you go to the right, you're going to hit this little kitten. And if you go to the left, you're going to hit this baby. And that's what you're going to have to decide what to do right then and right there. And in fact, you're not going to decide what to do it because the car is going to decide what to do it. You don't drive it anymore. The computer does. So what kind of car software would you want designed into your car? One that hits the cat or hits the baby? I think we can always almost say, sorry, cat, but you're toast. But the question then happens, what if it's not a kitten? What if it's a family? Then how do we want the car designed? Do we want the car designed to hit the family or the baby? This becomes a much harder question. But maybe we say it's a utilitarian issue, and we take, and this is why I call it the utilitarian death paradox, we take the family over the baby. I guess I'd be okay with that. But what if it was a different family? What if it was a family you didn't care as much about? Like it was this family, right? Then you want to, I mean, they get killed every week. They come back. Then I should take the baby. How does the car know which family? And what if it wasn't a family and a baby? What if it was just two people? And it happened to be two people that you weren't indifferent about. What if it was this person and this person, right? How do you make sure the car kills the right one in this situation? So, and the last situation is, what if it's a family and the other way to go is a brick wall? And you can either kill the family or you can kill yourself. And the car is supposed to make that decision for you. Even if we think it's okay to kill the family, kill yourself, would you really buy a car that was going to make this decision? 4 reasons why you get acquired. And these are somewhat obvious to me, but maybe less so, I don't know. It's take the assets of the target company and use them for something. Take the assets of the acquiring company and use them for something. I just flipped those two, but it doesn't matter. Diversify your business lines and acquire talent. Those are really the 4 reasons why you're acquiring companies. Only one of these reasons doesn't require integration. Everything else requires integration between the companies. You've got to, if you're buying a company and if it's not for just complete diversification and a new business line, you are integrating them in some way. So About.com is a company which you probably have all used if the stats are right. You may not have known it because you don't necessarily navigate to it. You get there from Google. A very large site. We bought them for 3 reasons. We being Ask.com bought About for 3 reasons. Leverage an existing asset of the target. So Ask.com is a search engine. And if you do a search on a search engine, you'll come up with answers. It turns out that these answers are from different companies. And when we looked at it, the companies that it come from, About.com was in that list a lot. And we started thinking, if we owned About.com, then someone comes to our site and they click on About.com and they don't leave us, they stay with us, and we can make money downstream. So that makes sense. Let's leverage their asset, creating content, to help us on our site. The other thing we did is we had a really strong ability to take our site and put it on Google. most of the traffic for content sites come from Google. It's changing a little bit with Facebook and Twitter and other things, but still a huge amount comes from Google. We are very good at this, maybe the best in the world. And we said, hey, we can take about and stick them on Google too. We know how to do it, and that adds value. And obviously, the other one is diversification from search into content. But in all three of these scenarios, we had to integrate very closely these companies post-acquisition. We need to integrate products, technologies, cultures, geographies. We had to create this one efficient system, which really ended up a system like this. Everyone has to be running at full speed, going forward, and we can't be worried about who is in control. And the problem with that is it meant that the acquired company had to sacrifice the things that got them to that point. They had to sacrifice caring about themselves more than anything else. So we heard these types of quotes when we bought them. Why don't you just leave us alone, basically, and let us keep doing what we were doing? Well, that's not why we bought you. That's the problem with that. But here's this. This is what happened. I mean, they were going down the road, and the rock fell of M&A, and it was the family or it was their baby. And ultimately, in this case, we couldn't convince the CEO, the now ex-CEO of the company, to hit the baby. But here's the lesson in all this. The lesson in all this is, if you're going to sell your company, be prepared to take on other obligations beyond the company. Question 3. How will driverless cars change our travel and consumption habits? And I said we get back to fewer cars, and we're back there now. So there's a lot of reasons to believe that driverless cars will, that autonomous vehicles, driverless cars, will end up reducing the number of vehicles produced. But there's plenty to say that will increase the number of vehicles produced. People can drive now that couldn't drive before. The greater coordination on the road means more diversity. So, more density. So with more density means you can put more cars on the road, you can get where you're going just as well. And you can read some of these other ones here. And they're all very reasonable reasons to believe that there's going to be more cars on the road when we have driverless cars. But by the same token, there's plenty of reasons to believe that there are going to be fewer cars on the road. Public transportation is one of the ones that I think is particularly interesting because you can make the point that driverless cars will reduce public transportation because I can now, like I use Uber, go point to point really easily and on demand. On the other hand, if there's no driver in the bus or in the public transportation, then you've just reduced the cost of public transportation by the number one factor in the overall cost, which is labor. So it can become cheaper and it become easier to use, and schedules can be better, and you don't have to sit in the cold and wait for it, which you don't have to do here, but you have to do in California. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be more cars or fewer cars. And neither do the people who are designing it. So how do you deal with this? You deal with this with starting with one thesis, and then you're flexible. That's the key. So here's how it might look with driverless cars. You come up with a blueprint and say, here, my thesis is more cars. I come up with a blueprint for it. I get some money, and yeah, it looks like it's selling. I do some metrics. I start putting charging stations in places where there makes sense if there's more cars, which means I need to do some road construction and increase then parking and urban density grows. And I've got this plan, and it makes sense. And this is my plan. I'm going to start building to the plan. Well, as it turns out, maybe it didn't work out. The money didn't come in when you started building that car. And so you have to build version 2.0 of the car. And this is the sort of less cars on the road version of the car. And then the money comes in, and then you change into public transportation and into more suburban sprawl. Like, you have to be flexible because you don't know which way it's going to come. In M&A, it's not that different. And the reason why successful M&A works not that differently is because of and the reason why it's important, I should say, is because of something called an earnout. So Investopedia is one of our companies, which we'll talk a little bit more in a second about. But an earnout is money that you get when your vision as a startup CEO or startup founder doesn't necessarily match the vision, or I shouldn't say vision, but the expected benefit of the acquiring company. The way you can solve that gap is with an earnout. You can say, well, look, pay me a certain amount of money now, and if we hit certain targets, I'll get more money on the backside. Usually that works out great. It did for us in this case, but it didn't for them. So this is why I'm using this example. Enrelate is a company we bought a couple years ago. It was one of the smaller companies, about 15 people at the time. And what they do is they put these links at the bottom of a content page. So you've probably seen this, and we actually talked about this earlier today, where you have like this link bait. at the bottom of the page. It might say, 15 celebrities who really shouldn't be wearing a bikini, or, like child actors who had plastic surgery or something like that, right? And they're at the bottom of the page. And it's actually a huge business. That real estate is really important. You get to the bottom of the page and you don't know where else to go. And so when you have something that looks clickable at the bottom, it gets a lot of clicks. Enrelate was probably the number 2 company in the space when we bought them, behind a company called Outbrain, which will go public now and is $1 billion valuation. Not the same story for Enrelate. Enrelate had technology which was really good at getting people from, so there's 2 things that this does and why publishers use it. One is to get people recirculated into their own site, more traffic on their own pages, and the other is to send to advertisers and get some money. We thought their technology was really good at Enrelate. We thought we could add our scale as a big content publisher, put them on our properties. They would learn more and their algorithms would get smarter. That would give us a competitive advantage, and we get a lot more direct revenue from the advertisers. And so we slapped a nice fat earnout on the direct revenue. And we had a plan, and here was the plan, right? We would start by increasing the distribution, putting their product on our pages. We would improve the recirculation technology from the data that we got. We'd use that to sign up more advertisers. The advertisers would make us more money, and we'd improve our algorithms for money, and then we'd win market share. What happened along the way? We couldn't sign up more advertisers. And the reason was, it turned out that improving the recirculation technology was not the thing that was winning in the marketplace. Content owners didn't really care as much about more traffic to their own sites. They cared about, give me some dollars. I'm having trouble paying for the content I already have, and I want the direct payment. And so our approach of getting scale just put us behind in the marketplace. We were able to continuously improve our recirculation technology, but that didn't win us any market share. What it did do, though, was improve our own performance so that, in fact, we're better than ever at sending people through our website, which is great for us. Given our scale, which we've already talked about, adding a few more percentage points of visitors or of page views is huge and led to an enormous amount of indirect revenue. So this is what we did. We took our scale and their technology, and we increased our page views, and we got a ton of indirect revenue. Unfortunately, they didn't get their earnout, because the earnout was all based on direct revenue. And that's why it's really important to start with a thesis, but make sure it's flexible, and make sure that flexibility is in your earnout. All right, question 4, will the infrastructure be ready? One of the really exciting things about driverless cars today is that a lot of the technology is already available. And it's already available in the marketplace. All these things are things you can get now. I didn't even know what some of these were, and I didn't even know some of the cars that I've driven in have them, but they're all there. I think that the cars can parallel park themselves. I think you know about probably adaptive cruise control. I didn't know about predictive pre-safe systems, which a lot of cars have now, which is a way of sort of predicting you're about to get in a crash and tightening your seatbelt and getting your airbag ready to go. That all exists today. What doesn't exist today is all the infrastructure, and this is why MCity, I think, is going to be so exciting, but all the infrastructure needed to make this stuff work in scale. Cars communicating with each other, just the street lights, all of a sudden eyeballs aren't important to optimize your street lights for. It's lasers, and that means a very different type of lighting on the roadway. Driving from the airport, I'm in California, but driving from the airport, seeing the snow banks on the side of the road, I'm thinking, where are the sensors going to get through the snow to help my driverless car? Obviously, security is a big issue. Not just the idea of hacking in, as we've seen with Sony is obviously, but if you can hack into these systems, and how can we mess things up? But also just vandalism. Like if cars are supposed to read the street signs, what happens when you vandalize, you paint some graffiti over the street sign? How does it handle that? Or if you switch the street sign? Obviously, the legal and regulatory framework, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the key is that the development of the infrastructure is the hard part. You could be the best company in a lot of measures. Your product is great, your sales team is fantastic, your market share is growing, everyone loves working for you, your board wants to sell at the right price that you want to sell at, and everything sounds really good. And yet, your infrastructure could suck. And I've seen this, every one of these things, over and over again. Bad data instrumentation, like I can't tell, your company's growing, but you can't tell me why. If you can't tell me why and you don't have the data to prove it, then I'm not very excited about buying it because I don't know if it'll stop tomorrow. Right? You don't have financial controls, which are critical. Your organization is a mess. Your comp plans give everybody either way too much money or way too little money. And and their capitalization table is bad, which means your ownership structure is a pain in the butt. So here's an example that we've dealt with. A company called ValueClick. There's a company called ValueClick. It was a public company. They had a division. So it's not a startup, but same issues. That division was actually made up of a couple of companies, one Investopedia, another PriceRunner, and a few other companies that you probably haven't heard of that don't do a huge business. But Investopedia and PriceRunner are big companies. Investopedia, a financial reference information site. PriceRunner, a comparison shopping engine that's popular, very popular in Sweden and Denmark. So, okay, interesting collection of companies, and in fact, there was good value in them. But then we looked at how they were organized. And this is literally how they were organized. All of it, the whole company was one team. And this is how the team was distributed. There was operations in Edmonton, Canada, product in Los Angeles, marketing in London, engineering in Shanghai. Stockholm had the partnerships. I mean, it was nuts. And what happened was, if you wanted to change the way Investopedia, a financial site, looked, you had to make sure that there wasn't anything just as important going on for the Nordics comparison shopping priorities. Like, you couldn't get anything done. It was impossible. This was the price we actually paid for this company, and this was the value of the businesses separated. And this is what the difference is, and that's what we got for cleaning up this mess. I think every day about whether that's worth it, because I'm still cleaning up this mess. But I think it is. But anyway, the people who sold it didn't get this value. So the lesson here is mind your infrastructure. Mind it all along the way. You got to do that for driverless cars, and you got to do it for your startup. Okay, last question. Who's going to be liable when the driverless car crashes? So you know the saying that if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it fall, does it actually make a sound, right? But if two driverless cars crash and there's no one there because there's no one in the car, it's going to make a sound, and you're going to hear about it. There's going to be a cop who shows up on the scene and he doesn't know who to talk to, and he's going to get pissed, and there's going to be a lawyer who's certainly going to get involved in somewhere, and a doctor just for the stress level, and an insurance salesman, and a politician ultimately to make laws about this. And if you're like me, and I'm looking at her now, but if it's your driverless car, if it's my driverless car, and I come home and say, it's the driverless car's fault, I face my wife, who's just as mad as everybody else. So you can't escape, even if there's no one there to hear it. And it's not like you can blame the car. It's not like you can stick Herbie in jail, right? That just won't work. Honestly, if you're thinking about putting Herbie in jail, you should put someone else from that movie in jail, not Herbie. So here's the thing: is who do you blame? Is there a button in the car that you could have pushed that could have stopped what happened, or a setting, and so forth? It's your fault? Is it the factory who built the car's fault? Is it the people who did the software? Is it the guys and women who developed the maps? Is it the hardware and the laser? I mean, is it the roadway itself? It's really hard to figure this stuff out. And if you don't know whose fault it is, it's going to be really hard to get going with all of this stuff. Which is why lots of people are saying it's the liability issues that could derail driverless cars more than anything else. With M&A, you've got the same problem. Once you start combining companies, a million things can go wrong. Communications can go wrong. You can have a problem employee. Competition can catch up with you. You can have bad priorities setting. You're not investing enough money. You can have a problem with culture and with geographies. And the key thing is, if you don't know whose fault it is when it fails, it's probably yours. You've got to be planned for all this stuff, even when you sell your company. Because even if you do know whose fault it is, it's probably yours too. And that's the message. The message here is simple. I don't need to give you a case study for this one. It's once you sell your company, it's still your company. This is the TLDR, too long didn't read. If you were on your cell phone most of the time, look up now, because these are all 5. And I'll just put them out here. Will they buy the car? Best deal requires getting the incentives right. Be prepared to sacrifice the company for the combination. Make sure your earnouts are flexible and can accommodate the unforeseen. Build the infrastructure that supports you along the way, and realize that even if you're part of a bigger company, it's still up to you.